You're listening to Release Your Resistance with Bex Beltran, Episode 3. Welcome to Release Your Resistance. This is Bex. The only reason why any of us don't have what we want in life is because of our own resistance. Right now, I'm learning how to recognize and release my resistance, and this podcast tells you how you can release your resistance so that you can live the exact life that you want. Let's get started. Do you know how you want to feel most of the time? Or the first question should be, do you know how you do feel most of the time right now? When I've been in presentations or workshops and I heard people answer the question, how do you feel most of the time? I hear answers like anxious, stressed, worried, neutral. Sometimes I hear happy. I remember when I was in a group where this question was asked, the feeling I thought I felt most of the time was curious. So take a moment, clear your mind, and answer this question. How do you feel most of the time? Now ask yourself, based on whatever answer you gave, is that how you would like to feel? Even though this seems obvious, in the past few years, I've realized I'm the one who gets to decide how I feel, so I can be intentional about the feelings I want. Isn't that crazy? I was going through life assuming my feelings were just happening directly to me, that feelings just happened as a result of circumstances, and that's just how it was. So hopefully there were good circumstances so I would have good feelings, but it only occasionally worked out that way. Now that I'm living a more intentional, aware life, I know I have a choice about how I will feel or try to feel most of the time. And through lots of mind wandering and writing and thinking and noticing, I've discovered 3 main feelings I want to feel. Right now, I'm drawn to these emotions, or are they values or keywords? I'm not sure yet, but I'm figuring out how I can remind myself of these feelings during my day-to-day. These feelings are engaged, inspired, and delighted. The definition of engaged is busy or occupied or having an engagement to marry, but that, of course, is not the definition I am talking about. The Merriam-Webster definition goes on to offer that engaged is greatly interested or committed. This is getting a little closer to my meaning. Engaged to me means I'm in a flow state. It's when I lose myself in whatever I'm doing or thinking about or talking about or creating. This can be by myself or it can be with other people. So yes, I guess greatly interested or committed does apply to how I want to feel. I notice myself feeling engaged when I'm by myself and when I'm writing or working on a creative project. I also remember feeling engaged back during my corporate work life when I was working alone on a project that involved organizing and correlating lots of data and information in a spreadsheet. I know that is not everyone's cup of tea, but give me just the right spreadsheet with just the right amount of data and a few super helpful formulas and I could be engaged for hours and forget to go to lunch. I love the idea of unlocking the secrets behind all the data, like conversion rates or seeing a trend month over month. It's a little nerdy, I know, but what a feeling of engagement to figure that all out and see a pattern emerge or be able to make predictions based on prior months. Engagement with other people, for me, means that I love engaged conversations. When we're hanging on each other's words and riffing off of each other's statements, interrupting is not changing the course of the conversation or redirecting. It's adding to what the other person is saying and it's deepening the meaning and understanding. It's when you notice the time and you've been talking for 40 minutes and it feels like you just started. There's a buzz of energy and both people feel it and want more of it. I love those conversations. I've noticed for me, those are usually one-on-one conversations, but I'm not ruling out talking with more than 2 people. Those just don't usually seem to be as engaging for me. What about you? Can you think back to a time when you were completely engaged in something, where once you finished, you didn't feel drained, you actually felt refreshed and maybe accomplished or even fulfilled? Think about why you felt that way. The next feeling I want to try to cultivate more in my life is inspired. The definition actually surprised me a little when I looked it up, but it makes complete sense. Of extraordinary quality, as if arising from some external creative impulse. That's the definition of the adjective. The definition of the verb is also so interesting. To fill someone with the urge or ability to do or feel something, especially to do something creative. It's so interesting that both of those definitions include the word creative, which I really like, but prior to looking it up, I don't think I was consciously equating inspiration with creativity, but maybe I'll incorporate that now as I think more about it. What about you? When you hear the word inspired, what does it mean to you? Do you think it implies an external source? Until I read that definition, I hadn't really considered inspired meaning motivated externally, but I guess it's true, but I don't think it has to be exclusively true. I like to be inspired by my own ideas and my own realizations. I think I inspire myself with my own thoughts and daydreams. And if you listen to the last episode, you know that I follow self-coaching, which means that I believe my feelings are caused by my thoughts, not external circumstances. So I really believe the only way I'll ever feel inspired is when I have a thought that generates that inspired feeling. Inspired to me means a spark of motivation. It's when I get excited for something. I notice my rate of speech increases. I think of a million questions I want to know the answer to. I think of metaphors that explain the idea or further demonstrate the topic. Inspired in problem solving or brainstorming situations is when my eyes are bigger than my stomach, so to speak, and my ideas come so quickly, and the faster they come, the more detailed they get. I sometimes scare myself off a little with the intricacies of my ideas. I tend to get too detailed too fast. So maybe that's a built-in decelerator for me when I am feeling super inspired. Inspired is like unlocking a portal to see so many possibilities with no obstacles and feeling like everything is doable and everything would be quick and easy, or if not, at least it would be rewarding. I've gotten inspired about party planning and business launches. I get inspired when I'm teaching someone a skill and notice that they're getting it. As soon as I see that first glimmer of understanding or connection, then I am in a rush to show them all the applications and add on all the complexities. Inspiration can be like a wave for me, maybe lots of waves or swells all around me, and they pass me by, but for some reason, something catches my attention or interest or imagination, and suddenly I'm inspired and I'm riding the wave and it just propels me forward with so much momentum, and it feels natural and effortless, and there's no resistance at all. And as I'm saying this, I'm also noticing a connection between engaged and inspired, like they're both about effortless flow. What inspires you? When do you notice yourself riding a wave of inspiration? The third feeling I'm trying to cultivate for myself is delighted. The definition of delighted is feeling or showing great pleasure. Apparently, the verb to delight comes from the Latin verb to charm. I like that a lot. I'm charmed by that word origin, or delighted, you could say. I know I'm delighted when I smile and laugh out loud. It doesn't have to be loud, guttural guffaw, even when I'm reading something on my phone in bed, or if I'm listening to a podcast and I start lightly laughing alone in my car, that means I'm delighted. It's when I can't stop looking at something, like a picture of a goat wearing a sweatband for Halloween-themed goat yoga. Color combinations delight me. Fonts delight me. Clever expressions and lyrics delight me. Word origins delight me. Quick-witted inside jokes delight me. I am delighted by synchronicities. I love pretty clothes, pretty shoes, and jewelry that all works together. I'm delighted by shiny things in unexpected places, like a chandelier in the bathroom. Sometimes I'm delighted by noticing delight in other people, like making someone else laugh when they least expected it, or seeing someone totally enjoying something, or getting really genuinely excited about something. What delights you? What do you catch yourself laughing out loud at? Or what do you notice your eyes traveling back to over and over again, even though you've already looked at it? It's so interesting to think about how these three emotions came to me as a triad. Maybe it started when I asked myself what I wanted for myself, for my life. And the answer was that my intentions are for it, life, whatever, to be easy, to learn, and to feel engaged. So when I thought about how things are easy for me, and when and how I learn, and how I get engaged in things, I realized the feelings I want to feel are engaged, inspired, and delighted. Then I thought, if those feelings are results that I want, what do I need to do and focus on and think to generate those feelings. I had been thinking about and playing around with how to use these desired feelings for myself for about a year and a half when I read Brooke Castillo's self-coaching book. And in it, she mentions her 3 desired feelings are peace, love, and excitement. And she even came up with specific thoughts or maybe mantras to think to create those feelings for herself. I haven't come up with those specific thoughts for myself yet, and I may do that in the future, but for now, I just try to notice the presence or absence of these feelings. I notice when I have been feeling these emotions and I try to backtrack to what the specific thoughts were, and then use those thoughts as clues to what I can practice thinking. How do I want to use these feelings? I want to catch myself when I'm on the slippery slope. Do you know what I mean when I say slippery slope? Maybe a better description of this is the borderline to the downward spiral. Okay, this is a little tangent from today's episode, but it is so interesting. I have this belief that sometimes I create or fall into a downward spiral, and that's when the mind in me, not my inner voice, takes over. That's when I'm in fear, scarcity, and doom mode. I worry, I stress, I try to tamp down negative emotions. I resist feeling my own feelings and facing my own thoughts. I probably try to mask what's going on with me by binging on sugar or alcohol or zoning out in a novel or a TV show, and sometimes I just go to bed. Luckily, I don't have these episodes too often anymore. Maybe I just have frequent mini versions of those episodes, but I have had the belief that there is a slippery slope at the entrance to this downward spiral, and some activities will cause me to start slipping right down. So a slippery slope activity would be, for example, to have a second glass of wine, or eating candy, or watching a silly sitcom. By the way, on the topic of my belief about the slippery slope, I was getting coached on this topic, and my coach pointed out to me that my belief in the existence and the power of the slippery slope was just a thought. That wasn't necessarily true. And I have to say, that surprised me. I had never considered that the slippery slope didn't actually exist, that it was just something I had made up and I was choosing to keep believing and fearing. So this is something I'm still working on in my own life. Obviously, I still believe it because I'm describing it to you as if it's a real thing. But I learned from my coach, it doesn't have to be. And if the belief is not getting me the results that I want, I can choose to drop it. Okay, wow. More on that later if you want to hear more about it. But for now, let's go back to my desired feelings of engaged, inspired, and delighted. So if I do catch myself tiptoeing towards my slippery slope, I can ask myself if what I'm doing is making me feel engaged, inspired, or delighted. If not, what could I do instead? For example, if I sit down on my bed in the middle of the day and start streaming an episode of a show that I've watched before just to relax or just to take a break from something that's bugging me, then at the end of the show, I just advance to the next episode. Hopefully, I can catch myself and ask, is this engaging? Is this inspiring? Is this delighting me right now? It probably isn't. It probably just feels familiar and comforting. And maybe that redirect will pull me right out because I've already decided I would rather feel engaged, inspired, and delighted than anything else. Here are a few things I can do or have done to feel these 3 feelings. To feel engaged, I can find a rabbit hole or something new that I want to learn about. I love YouTube for this because I'll start with a question and I'll find a video that will answer the question. But the video will introduce me to other vocabulary or another element of the topic that I didn't know about, so I'll search for that one, and then I'll learn something else. Or YouTube will suggest an additional video for me to watch, and I'll like the presenter, or I'll like the channel, so I'll just look to see what other videos they have. You get the idea. I also like to just get started on a project to start to feel engaged, like producing content for this podcast. When I first decided to go for it, I started writing down all the possible topics on 3x5 cards. Then I started to arrange them in order that made sense, and then I decided to match the topics to the months of the year 2020, and then I noticed that I had some weeks without episodes. So I kept thinking about what I would want to write and talk about, and then 4 hours later, I was excited and motivated, and I felt so engaged with what I had been working on, and I had forgotten to eat, and I didn't notice it had gotten dark outside. Okay, what do I do to feel inspired? When I learn something new and notice the possibility, and my mind starts to see connections, I get inspired. So I guess the YouTube example that I just mentioned applies here too. I also love going to in-person trainings and conferences. And I actually also really like going to tour model homes. Not only do I get inspired by seeing the furniture and the room layouts and the accessories, I get inspired by the story of who would live there and what would they do in that kitchen and what kind of parties could happen on this patio and how this separate master suite would be perfect for an Airbnb or an exchange student. Obviously, I sometimes get inspired for things that have nothing to do with my personal life. I don't think I would ever have an Airbnb or an exchange student in my house, and I'm not planning to buy a new home, but I love getting that inspired feeling even if I don't intend to take any action on it. To feel delighted, sometimes I reread what I've written in my past morning pages. Sometimes I just laugh at myself, not in a mean way, so maybe it's better to say I laugh with myself. Like one day I flipped back to see what I had written on a Monday a few weeks prior, and the writing started out with something like, Monday, another week of work, blah, which I found so funny. It was obviously so genuine and authentic and how I was feeling on that Monday morning, but seeing it later way out of context, it just made me laugh. I also love looking at pretty interior design and organization websites like Jenny Comenda's interior design site or Jen Jones' iHeart organizing site. These sites actually delight me, inspire me, and suck me into deep engagement. Sometimes when I daydream, I hit all three. Sometimes when I'm creating art, I am getting all of them at once. So what do you think? Do you want to borrow these 3 desired feelings? Or maybe come up with a few on your own? How do you want to feel most of the time? What do you think you would need to think to generate those feelings? I'm curious to hear what you come up with. And that is what I wanted to share with you today. I just wanted to describe how and why I want to feel engaged, inspired, and delighted. And now I want to hear your thoughts and your reactions. Send me an email at hi@bexb.org or leave me a comment in the show notes for this episode. And P.S., if you're on my email list, you are one of my favorites, and I emailed you a bonus list of a few unexpected things I'm completely delighted by. It's in your email this week along with this episode. If you're not on my email list yet, please make sure you join by sending me an email at hi@bexb.org so you don't miss the fun extra stuff I tell all my favorite people. And next week, I will be talking about metaphors. You got a little taste of it today as I was describing the slippery slope. I can't wait for you to hear how and why I use metaphors all the time in my thinking, writing, coaching, and teaching. Talk to you then. Hope you have a great week. This has been Release Your Resistance. Thanks for listening. If you like this podcast, make sure you are subscribed and please leave me a review on iTunes. If you'd like to continue this conversation one-on-one or in real time, come visit me on my site at bexb.org to see how we can work together.